When it comes to cycling, there are few things that I would argue are more important than a good, proper bike fit. When you start cycling, obviously the most important thing for you to do is purchase a helmet. But as you get more and more into the sport, whether you do it recreationally or you do it competitively, a proper bike fit is crucial for a lot of things, namely performance, comfort, and injury prevention. And look, it's not the most glamorous upgrade that you can do for your bike. And I get that. It's not some super slick, super lightweight carbon wheel set or a new drivetrain or an upgrade like that. But I can promise you that a proper bike fit is going to make a larger difference than any other upgrade that you could buy for your bike. And if you find yourself asking, like, who should get a bike fit? Should I get a bike fit? And really, it goes for anyone that's just maybe racking up miles throughout the week and just doing it for fun, or those that are doing it more competitively. At the end of the day, it's for everybody that rides a bike. And honestly, I would recommend a good bike fit to anybody that rides more than twice a week. Now, cycling differs quite a bit from other sports. You essentially have a tool that you're doing all of your work on, which is the bicycle. And as such, the bike needs to be more of an extension of your body and not something that you just push really hard on the pedals on, if that makes sense. You're on it for hours and hours. You're putting all of your power into the crank, and you're doing the same motion over and over again, thousands of times. So that tool that you use really needs to be tailored to your body. The bike that you ride needs to fit your height, your torso length, your leg length, arm length, all of that. And this is what a good professional bike fit really helps with. When you really get into it, it's far more than just raising or lowering your saddle. It's an entire process looking at your knee angles, cleat placement, fore and aft of the saddle, the height of the saddle, the symmetry on the bike, your back angle, your arm angle. It really encompasses everything. I desperately needed a bike fit on my road bike. I had it for over a year at this point, and nothing I did was making me comfortable on the bike. I would go on one ride and think, okay, I've nailed it. I've got it. But then I would go on another ride the next day or in a day or two, and everything would hurt. So I didn't have it. So what I did was looked around my area where I live to see if there were any professional fitters or bike shops that maybe had the tools to do so. And obviously something like this isn't going to be cheap. I mean, it takes a lot of time. It's a big chunk of time. There's a professional involved. They have software. They have all of this stuff. And so really, you're going to want the best of the best. And really, I encourage you to look around in your local area. Oftentimes, you can go to a local bike shop and they either have the tools, have a fitter, somebody there that can do it, or they're going to know where to send you. But I am fortunate enough to have one of the best fitters around in my own city, David Richter with Fount Cycling. The Fount Cycling Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit public charity dedicated to teaching and developing riders of all backgrounds into smart, tactical, strong professionals. Founded in 2019 by David and his wife Jennifer, the Fount Cycling Guild provides other services such as coaching, performance testing, physio testing, and of course, professional bike fits. They focus on providing riders the tools and knowledge to reach their full potential. David has been in the cycling game for many years, racking up national championship wins, World Cup track wins, and generally being insanely strong on any given day. Once he finished up his pro cycling career, he knew he was going to transition easily into being a coach and providing other cycling services, which included being a bike fitter. And during the process, David mentioned that this was one of, if not the most important thing that he could have learned that would help boost a rider's performance. He's taken numerous courses and classes, gone through training programs from every major fitter that you can think of. Really, his knowledge on the subject is vast, and I got to experience that firsthand as we were going through everything, and it's going to be a process that we get into in just a minute. If you're curious about Fount as an organization, a team, or what other services they may offer, I have a link at the top of the description for their website. I went there to set the date for my bike fit, and then obviously when the time came, loaded up my bike, made my wife come with me so she could operate the camera, and we went over to see David and the Fount Cycling shop. And now this place is awesome. This was actually the first time that I had gotten to see inside the shop. And really, it's like a mix of a cozy cycling hangout mixed with every training tool that you could ever need. There's space for trainers, the bike fit setup, a gym, treadmills, pool in the back. They've got it all. And when you walk into the shop and you see how everything is laid out and everything that they have, you can really see their passion for training, optimization, and cycling as a whole. So without further ado, let's jump into the whole fit process. For starters, David uses a software called The Logic. This runs on a computer and utilizes cameras with dots, it'll make more sense in a minute, to measure your angles as precisely as possible. And then with that, you can make real-time adjustments and then see the results of the changes right there on the screen. And, fun little tidbit here, the camera he is using is an Xbox Kinect, which is not really relevant to anything, but I thought that was pretty neat. Now, the first thing that you do is you set the bike up on the trainer and you level everything out within the software. I kind of missed this part because I was putting my kit and my shoes and stuff on, but essentially what we did was set the bike on the trainer and the camera was facing the drivetrain side of the bike. David went around with a tool to mark things like the hood height, the saddle height, where the middle of the crank was, and stuff like that. So really it just lines your bike out, levels it out in the software, and places markers where things are. Like, again, like the center of your saddle, top of your hoods, etc. And then once everything was set up, we did not jump straight into measurements. Instead, David had a list of questions that he wanted to go over first before I ever got on the saddle.
We talked a little bit about you already, why you came in here, and tell me some more about how you feel. Like, what do you feel is good, what's bad? Do you have any pain, soreness?
No, not really. Every now and then I get some pain in my hip.
Anyone ever tell you had like a leg length discrepancy, or you had?
My left leg is a little bit short.
Yeah. Sometimes, see, that's why it's good to talk about this as well too. At least you get a symptom here, or something there, and then everything starts to add up.
Yeah.
So what is like when I was an athlete, that's kind of where I was going. I kind of sensed like higher was better, it felt better, it felt easier to come around the top. Didn't really know why, what was going on here, but it did. And then now, as you study it, and I see other people, I'm doing bike fits, I start to understand why. And that's what part of a good bike fit is too. Is the physiology part of it, knowing the physiology part of it and PT part of it too. Like what's going on, what sequence is the muscles firing, why does it feel easier?
And if a bike fitter does that, that's how you know you're with a good bike fitter. You're in good hands. And he wanted to know things like, how do I feel overall on the bike? What are some things I wish I could change? Are there any consistent pains? Do I feel like I'm losing power because of where my saddle and stuff is? All of that. So now we'll get into more of the fun stuff, more of the process itself. To begin, I got on the bike and pedaled. We made no changes. This is just how it was when we walked in the door. What this did was give us our starting point. It gave us our starting measurements, our starting angles, all of that. And with that starting information, David had some good ideas about what would need to be changed. After the first initial pedaling session, we did a short physio test. Now, this was mainly to check for leg length discrepancies. Another thing that he checked was my varus tilt as I marched in place. And for some reason, this was the hardest part of the entire process for me. I don't know why. It was very hard to march in place.
Some people, when they lift their foot up, it goes the opposite, like pigeon toe, Okay. Some people, pretty straightforward. Neutral. Yeah, you're just mild toe out, so naturally you're mild toe out. That's where you're going neutral. We want to find neutral for that navicular joint because when it's neutral, you can produce the most power, you can use less stabilization muscles, and that has to do where those cleats center, right? Like if they're not centered, you're going to be, you could be right at the end range on the float, hit a bump, poof.
Okay,
Yeah. So we just want to find out. It shouldn't be any different on the bike than it is off the bike, but we also check it.
But after doing an eye test, he determined that I didn't really have a leg length difference. The 2 millimeter shim that I mentioned earlier wasn't really that big of a difference anyway, so we took that out. And as a side note, I really wanted to try and climb this rope very badly, but I was far too shy to ask. After the physio test, we went back to the bike to make the first adjustments. And for those, David started with my cleats. I think there would be a common misconception that the first thing you would want to do is raise or lower the saddle, maybe move it forward, move it back, or something like that. But no, it's very commonplace to start with the cleats. Your feet are the first point of contact with the bike. And so if your cleats are in the wrong position, everything will be thrown off wildly. And it's unlikely that you can fix that by raising a saddle or lowering it, moving it backwards or forwards. Now, the specific things that he would check here would be things like the fore and aft of the cleat, the angle that the cleat is tilted to, and the lateral placement of your cleat, like how centered it is it off to the right, is it off to the left. We focused a ton of time on this, making minor adjustments and then looking at me on the bike, then hopping off, readjusting the cleats, getting back on the bike, checking it out. And I got to throw in here, bless David and his patience. I wear lace-up mountain bike shoes. I use those on my road bike, my gravel bike, my mountain bike. I just use one pair of shoes and they're lace up. And so David would make a micro adjustment. I would get on, look at the software, see what changed, and then he would want to adjust something else. So I would have to get off, untie my shoes, hand them to him, put them back on, tie them back up, get on the bike, get off the bike, untie. And I had to do that at least 5 or 6 times. And he was very patient over the entire thing. Didn't rush anything, wanted to make sure that we got those cleats perfect and where they needed to be. But once we got the cleats dialed in, we moved on to some other changes. These changes can include saddle height, saddle fore and aft, the position of your hoods, the angle of your hoods, width of the handlebars, length of the stem, etc., etc. Of course, David went over what each item could impact. I'll cut in what he said here, but the quick version is saddle height affects your leg extension, pedaling efficiency, and risk of knee, hip, or lower back pain. Saddle fore and aft position influences your balance over the bike, knee tracking, leverage, and how effectively you engage your core and glutes during the pedal stroke.
It feel easier, the reason why it feels easier is you're firing your hip flexors less. So if your saddle's low, I'm exaggerating a little bit, to come over the top of the pedal stroke, you have to fire those hip flexors hard.
That's what it feels like.
To get over the top. Exactly.
And so I don't know. It's
as you straighten that out,
yeah,
you don't fire those hip flexors as long or as hard. So it's just like bam, bam. You come over the top of the pedal stroke.
Right.
So that's why it feels easier. So that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then but that's only part of it. Too. Then you also want leverage. You want your leverage on the bike, so you want to get forward generally.
Right.
But what's too far over, right? And that's what I've learned through bike fitting is I found what is too far. And figured out what it is that's going on. Like when you start to get too far forward, what happens is the head of your femur, it's not round, it's kind of elliptical shape. So as you move forward like this, the head of your femur gets closer to the back of your patella. At some point, it just rests on the back of your patella. It doesn't hurt, but it rests on there. Right. So if you think about it, if you're doing 90 RPMs,
right,
bang, 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 and then that's why your knee is sore.
That makes sense.
You stop riding, it gets better, heals up, and then you start riding, it happens again. So you can kind of get away with it for 15, 20 minutes, and it starts to hurt. So saddle too high. What's too high? There is a too high. Too high is after about 150 degree angle here. What happens is the lateral condyle. There's a little bony protrusion right there, that little bump.
Yep.
That bone there, it's got a groove in it. For what happens is there's a tendon that comes around here, and it inserts right there into that groove. It sits in that groove, so it's a nice little groove for the tendon to sit in. At 150 degrees, it sits in there nice. At 151, it flicks out of there. So that little flicking motion, think about that, 90 times a minute. Like all of a sudden, it starts to get sore. Yeah. So that's too hot. We don't want that either.
So what did we end up doing to my bike specifically? So after looking at the software with my dialed in cleats, David noticed that I was reaching just a tad on my pedal stroke. He also noticed that I was really behind the bottom bracket. To fix this, we tapped my saddle down about 3 millimeters, which is not a lot. That's a pretty small adjustment. But then we moved the saddle forward about 6 millimeters. Now, when you think of moving your saddle on a bike, you have to think of it like a triangle. The seat tube is often at an open degree angle. And so when you raise the saddle up, you're actually moving the saddle further behind the bottom bracket. When you move it down, you move it further in front of the bottom bracket. So tapping the saddle down just a bit and then moving it forward a considerable amount, this gives me more leverage, but it also decreases that leg angle to a more desired degree. But the biggest difference for me came from him moving my hoods. I just kind of left my hoods where they were when I built the bike. The bike was mostly put together in the box, and so when I put the handlebars on, I just kind of left the hoods. I didn't really even think about it. So what David did is rotated these up quite a bit and moved them slightly in. One thing I compare it to is an ergonomic mouse. If you've ever seen an ergonomic mouse, you're kind of at a slight angle because your hand naturally rests at a slight angle. You don't want to be straight on, putting a lot of pressure on your wrist. You don't want to be out, putting abnormal pressure on your wrist. But if you have just a slight tilt on your bars, it feels amazing. But after he made those changes, it was a whole different bike to me. I had never been that comfortable or felt more in control of that bike. And my wife also commented while filming it that I looked way more in control, a lot more powerful and quieter on the bike. I wasn't moving as much. I didn't have as much jankiness going on when I was pedaling. So at this point, we were practically finished. Now, chopped up, it seems like a very quick process, but we were there for over 2 hours. And depending on the bike and how close you have it to being set up properly and everything, it could take even longer than that. But at the end, David gave a quick rundown of all the changes that we made.
So cleats, we are actually mid. So when you came in, you had them all the way back, and you had them all the way narrow. So you're mid now. You're kind of a mid guy in between there.
Yep.
And they're still back, but they're further up than they were.
Slightly more
Yeah,
forward.
yeah. So it's kind of like halfway between all the way back.
Okay.
You can kind of see with those little marks where they were tightened down,
Yep.
where it was. So you're about probably 2-3 millimeters further forward.
Okay.
Bike, we lowered the saddle just a hair, not much, just a little bit. We actually moved it quite a bit further forward.
I haven't even pulled it.
Yeah. So
Oh, wow.
again, so what I'm looking for moving forward, and this is why I need feedback from you too. It's like, again, this is a performance fit too. Like once we start to get dialed, we kind of push those limits. You start to get sore knees, let me know, because we can relieve that. Because I don't know what everybody's needs a little different.
Yeah.
My guideline is just based on averages,
Okay.
But that's where I know a little bit more about you. I can push you a little further too. You're local. I can be like, Jordan, move your seat back a little bit. I'd rather err towards performance, though. That's what that.
Yeah.
And all performance is leverage. When you further forward, you have more leverage. It's very simple. It moves that fulcrum. It moves it so you have, when you press down, you're over the top of the pedals. That's one of the reasons why you start pedaling faster. It's like you're over the top of the pedals. You're like, this is great.
So, is that why you see, like in the Tour, pros, their saddles are slammed forward.
That's
and then
the
they drive
trend.
up here.
Here's the deal. Like, I have no clue why bike manufacturers continue to have set back seat posts. Like, everybody moves it forward. It's like nobody's
slams
6'5" and femurs this long, right? With 180 cranks, is everybody's pretty much shorter cranks, and like, so anyway, that's the reason why you're seeing them in pros.
Okay. Yeah.
And generally further forward is better generally.
Yeah.
But we don't want pain either.
Right.
We leveled the saddle out. You were at a -6. You're at about 0 degrees now.
Okay.
Again, this is where I'm looking for feedback. So this is generally where we want you, because I don't want you sliding off the front,
Right.
because then you put pressure in your hands too, in the front end of the bike. So we level it out. If you start to feel some like soft tissue issues, where it's like, oh man, really sore down there, maybe we could tap it down again a couple of degrees or so. But I think let's just leave it there and see how it is. This is where I would put it. We didn't have to change this at all. I like where your angles are and your hips. Reach is actually good too. It actually improved a little bit moving it forward, but that's not why we moved it forward. We moved the hoods up. I also canted them in slightly.
Yes.
That also, that is also the trend you see, but it's not necessarily, and it's not why I did it. Moved them in because that's your natural angle of your wrist. The other thing is it does allow for multiple positions here. So you can get there and you can still grab this for control. When it's out like this, it's harder to do. So you're going to have unneeded pressure right here on your deltoid. But with this, you can actually sit there, and this is a new position here.
That makes total sense.
So cleats,
Yeah.
saddle down, saddle forward, cleats forward.
Yeah.
Mid rather than narrow.
Sure.
Hoods up, hoods in, and that's where we're at.
And one thing that he mentioned afterwards is that he always likes to hear back from his clients following a fit, especially the first ride that the person does outside. There's a lot of difference between riding the trainer while being measured and everything, and actually taking your bike outside to ride it. And so David mentioned that he's always happy to answer questions if something feels off or there's pain or anything like that. He's always happy to take a second look at things. And he also mentioned the pricing of additional bikes. If you're like me, you have many bikes. And of course, once one feels great and the fit is great on it, you're going to want to mirror that on some other bikes. And so he mentioned that if you brought another bike in, then that bike fit is actually half off. The reason being is all of your measurements are saved on the software. So when you bring a new bike in, you set it up and just move everything to those measurements, and the bike fit is the same. And another great thing is that at the end of it all, you get a sheet emailed to you detailing your new measurements, as well as some of the before and after information. You can take these measurements to kind of mirror and set up your other bikes. But as I said before, David keeps the information, so if you were to bring in another bike, the process is a lot faster. So how is it? It's been a couple weeks since I had the bike fit done, so how does everything feel? And to be honest, I'm not trying to exaggerate or anything. I was so uncomfortable and not didn't feel in control of my bike at all. And now it's like a brand new bike to me. It feels amazing. I really just feel so much more in control of the bike. But I noticed too that I'm pedaling a lot more normally. What I mean by that is I'm not rocking as much. My bike seems to stay a lot steadier. I'm not moving forward and backwards on the saddle as much as I usually did, because before I didn't have the bike fit right. And so I was trying to compensate by moving forward and back and forward and back. And my body was trying to find a comfortable spot to stay. And one big thing to note, and this might catch your attention. If nothing else caught your attention, this might do it. There seems to be a power output increase. I know. Pick your jaw up off the floor. I'm talking 3 to 5 watts stronger. And it seems like I can hold a higher wattage for a longer period of time. And again, that goes back to the position on the bike, the comfort on the bike, being able to do that repetitive motion over and over and over again without having pain, overextending, underextending, or anything like that. But really, that's all there is to it. Again, this is such an important thing to do for really any level of rider. And it goes for any discipline as well, be it mountain bike, track, gravel, road, anything. And again, I want to thank David and the Fount Cycling Guild again for letting me film this entire process. Again, if you're curious about anything that they offer or the Fount Cycling team or the organization as a whole, there is a link to their website in the description. And as always, I'm happy to answer any questions in the comments about the process. Was it worth it? All of that stuff. So if you have any questions, please leave a comment and I'll get around to answering them as soon as I can. And at the end of this, I had an exclusive interview with David to talk about himself, the Fount Cycling team, and the organization as a whole. So I'll leave you with that interview.
All right, so bike fit completely finished now, and I'm sitting here with the David Richter, the how many times have you been national champ?
A few times.
A few times national champ. And throughout the video, you saw the process. Excellent bike fit, very knowledgeable person about that. So wanted to sit down and kind of talk to you about Fount as an organization, as a team, as a nonprofit. So if you want to just tell us about.
Yeah, I mean, Fount really is me. It's what I could offer. It's like my whole life's been dedicated to cycling for the most part. I was a pro racer for almost 20 years. Towards the end of my career, I knew I was going to be a coach, something that I wanted to do. I wanted to teach, pass it on. And so I started really taking everything in, studying, coaching, and, down the line, like I told you, I think in the bike fit is like, I realized that I have to study bike fit too. That's part of the performance is bike fit. So, when I retired, I started coaching. I hooked up with another pro cyclist in Seattle, and we had a business, Metier. It was called Metier in Seattle. We had basically a big version of this. It had a cafe, studio for training, testing, a bike team, had it all. It was great. I did that for 10 years almost with my partner, Todd. And eventually it was something that I found myself doing things that I didn't necessarily want to do. I didn't want to run a bike shop. I didn't want to run a cafe. I love eating at cafes and hanging out and having coffee, but it's not my passion. My passion is performance. I love the team aspect. I love coaching. So that's really where we came up with Fount. At the time, my girlfriend then, which is now my wife, Jennifer, another pro, she was a pro cyclist as well. She encouraged me to start something new. So together we started Fount. Fount's just, it's a desirable quality or commodity. We had a whole branding in Seattle about what Fount was, and they interviewed us and presented some stuff, tweaked some stuff, and we came up with Fount, our branding, our colors, our schemes, the font for Fount.
I used to, when you guys moved here, for the longest time, every time I would mention it to Alyssa, I called you guys the font.
Font.
The font team.
You're not the only one. This happens all the time. It's definitely Fount, like a fountain. Like a place you go to get this knowledge. That's kind of what Fount is. And so that's what Fount is. It's like, what is Fount? Well, it's the performance part, right? It's like, I love making people better. So it's coaching. It's, along with that, is bike fits. Physio testing. That's something I've become really good at. And, a unique thing that I do a lot of is, muscle oxygen. I was one of the first to really get involved nationwide or worldwide in muscle oxygen. It still hasn't even really caught on because there's so much you have to know about it. Years of training. But anyway, it's the coaching, the performance, the team. In Seattle when we had the team, it was a club, but it also had, what became a professional women's team. We moved here to Kentucky and kind of started over. Really, it was like fresh, So we built this. We had this open barn, and we made it where I do my fits, my physio testing. We have a small gym. We have a pool now in the back. We have a place to work on bikes. So yeah, and what is Fount? As far as we may not be a women's pro team forever. It might be a men's pro team. It might turn into a juniors program. That's kind of the direction we're going. Is like here in Kentucky, mountain biking's big. Most of the athletes that are young are mountain bikers. Nike is huge. The road scene is almost non-existent.
There is nothing. There's almost nothing. Especially when I got into it, 10 years ago or so, there's nothing. It was mountain bike only.
Exactly.
Mountain bike races, that was it.
Yeah, and here's the deal. And a lot of people that live here in Kentucky don't realize it because they haven't been outside riding outside of Kentucky. These are the best roads in the world. We came back for Jennifer went to Eastern Kentucky. She had a scholarship for running there.
That's right. Yeah.
And she had a reunion there, and I decided to tag along and brought my bike, and I was riding around. I was like, this is amazing. This is like absolutely amazing, And we were at the time looking for a place east of the Mississippi to get a second house so we didn't have to travel so far.
Right.
To all the bike races. And so we were like, well, wonder what we can get here in Kentucky, Seattle money goes a long way in Kentucky. So we did, and so much so, and then we bought the house sort of impulsive, because we loved it so much. And then we were like, well, when do we live in Seattle? When do we live in Kentucky? It's like, we sold our place in Seattle. So we're full in. We have roots down now. Wolfie's full on going to school here. And we decided to go all in for Kentucky. So this is where Fount is now, So we built this, and here we are. And, like the road scene will grow, because the roads are so good. People just don't know about it, And so this is a great place to sort of be at ground zero as far as the road. But we love mountain biking too. We love cross, we love track, we love it all. And it's really, Kentucky's in a great spot, even though there's not a velodrome here. Indianapolis is not far, South Carolina is not very far. It's pretty close to everywhere. You could drive 6 hours any direction and be somewhere. Yeah, exactly. So Fount is anything you could think of bikes. Like cycling. As far as cycling performance, it's just like there's not a lot of questions I can't answer about the bike.
No, that's awesome. Yeah. So you mentioned the team as well. How many members of the team do you guys have?
It's a good question. So when we were in Seattle, we had over 100 members in our club. We had daily workouts / rides. We call it live training. That's kind of what we hope to build here. We're not in a big hurry. We want to build our actual place here too. So there is a place to host rides and gather and come and have meetings and have fun. But we hope to grow the club. So that's part of the reason why we're going to put a little bit more effort into it next year, is as far as locally, rather than right now a lot of time spent on the pro team traveling around. So
Right,
we're going
right.
to kind of reduce that a little bit.
And again, there's nothing in Kentucky. You say
Exactly,
you got to
exactly,
travel,
exactly,
you got to go around.
exactly.
Yeah.
So we hope to grow the club. So right now there's just a few members as far as the club, but we still have the professional team. We still have people in Seattle that are in the club that remain in the club, and that's kind of was the big picture when we started. Was like, well, maybe we can have a Southern California fountain, a Northwest fountain, Kentucky fountain, Fount South. There's a lot of different founts that we can have, and so there's plenty of room to grow with that. But we just need to make sure that we take care of Georgetown first. We still, to this day, for our pro team, we have a tryout camp. And this is very unique.
You guys were doing that.
Yeah. Nobody does that. It's like, but like, see, so my background before cycling was baseball. Like, I lived and breathed baseball. Growing up, that's all I thought about was baseball. And
I don't know a thing about this.
well, the thing about baseball, and Jennifer came from track and field, running. It's like both those collegiate sports is like it's all about practice.
Mm-hmm.
Like you go to practice and you learn, and you have these coaches. You have a batting coach, a pitching coach, a hitting coach. You have a fielding coach. You have a bench coach. You have all these coaches, right? You have a coach for everything. In cycling, everyone just rides and does their own thing. It's just like so the guidance is not there, right?